right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to an episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. And my guest tonight, I think, if my research is correct, is the only McDonald's All-American in Maine high school basketball history. So it's kind of a big deal. It's kind of big time. We got Ashley Cimino joining us tonight on the podcast. Coming from Boston. Ashley, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yes, you mentioned before we just came on here that you haven't talked about this stuff or thought about this stuff in a while. Is that on purpose? Like, did you just try to block it out once you were all done and you didn't want to go back, or you just life gets in the way? What's going on?
I think part of it's just life kind of moved on. After I graduated, I was mentally pretty done with the sport. So, I haven't really thought about or talked about, my previous years in a very long time. I want to say like really 10 years or so. So I'll make sure I'll try to remember everything. But yeah, it's been a while. But glad to talk about it now.
When was the last time you actually touched the basketball? Like, did you get rid of it? Did you entirely just ditch it? Like, as soon as you got done school, you're like, I'm done. No more.
No, not right after. I worked some camps, worked out with my sister and brother who are younger than me. But truthfully, probably haven't touched a basketball or like laced up sneakers in 5 years. It's been a while. And actually it's funny you asked that because I've thought about, I gotta get back into it at some point. So, but yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, I was gonna say, like, you're in a good spot. You're in Boston. Like, there's got to be like some women's leagues or something like that for you to get back into. Like that itch has got to be there. I would think you spend so much time, like the entire first half of your life. That's what it was. So I'm guessing the itch has got to be there a little bit.
It is a little bit. I watch a lot. I watch a lot of NBA. I actually don't watch too much college anymore. Except when the Stanford women are winning a national championship. But I definitely, the itch is coming back a little bit. So I maybe I'll get back out there at some point.
Yeah. So you mentioned the alma mater, you mentioned Stanford. We're going to kind of go back and trace the history of how you started off in Maine, wound up at Stanford, who just happens to be the national champs. So maybe we'll talk a little bit about what this year looks like. Let's go back to the beginning. So you're in Boston now, but Maine, born and raised, right? Were you born and raised in Portland?
Yeah. So I was born in Portland. I grew up in Yarmouth. So went to Yarmouth public schools and then went to NYA right before McAuley. So we've been born and raised in Maine.
What's the basketball background? Was it something that was in the household growing up, or was it something you just did because the other kids did? How'd you get introduced to the game?
Yeah, so my dad introduced me to it. Before we even got a hoop, I remember, I'm like 5 or 6 at the time, but he drew this huge circle in our garage and just like had me throw the ball, like hitting the circle on the wall. But yeah, he's the one that taught me all about the game. He, didn't play in college, didn't really play in high school. But, my grandfather and my great uncles played over at Cheverus. So it's, been in the family.
So you mentioned how you didn't play in college or anything like that. Like, did he force it on you, or was it just more so like, what, let's go try this. Let's go do this and see what happens type thing?
Yeah, no forcing. He always, and both my parents always let me know, if you don't want to do this anymore, you don't have to. But I think I saw, as I got older, the opportunity it could bring me. So I was bought in. So yeah, never forcing me into it, but a lot of support.
Obviously, you turned out to be okay, which we'll talk about all the exploits in high school and college and stuff like that. But how long were you a late bloomer? Because I checked the Stanford website. Your profile's still on the Stanford website, just so you know, too. It's still out there, listed at 6'3". So you were probably a big little kid, which could have might have been a little bit awkward.
No, I was skinny. I was very tall. I was tall always, always the tallest one in my class. And then, by freshman year of high school, I was 6'1", grew a couple more inches. I tell people now I'm 6'2", 6'3" was my roster height, I say. But yeah, always tall. But I always, tried to play out positions because, you wanted to be a little bit versatile.
Yeah. You played anything else growing up, or was it just basketball?
I played soccer, softball in middle school. And then, ran cross country and did track, but basketball was kind of the full year round sport.
You mentioned growing up in Yarmouth. You mentioned the family connections at Cheverus and stuff like that. So you kind of sounds like maybe you bounced around from school to school a little bit before ultimately ending up at McAuley. So early on, like what feeder program were you involved with?
You mean from like a AU perspective?
Or even before that, even like elementary school,
Yeah,
middle school.
just the Yarmouth rec leagues. I mean, played those every year. So I started AU actually pretty early. I want to say like I was 10 or 11, played up a few years with the local AU team. So, but yeah, it was really just like rec leagues and, tons of camps and things like that.
So which AAU program? Because there's kind of been an explosion here, like in the last 5-10 years here in Maine in terms of just the amount of programs out there. I'm guessing there weren't as many options back then, but who were you running with back then?
So pre like 8th grade, you know what? I can't even remember the name of our team. So I played for this team called the Coastal Suns super early in like my early teen years. And then played on a team my dad coached with a bunch of girls that actually I ended up playing at with McAuley. Can't remember the name, unfortunately. And then right before, I know, so bad. Right before my freshman year, I started playing with a team based out of New Hampshire, the New England Crusaders. And that was kind of what kind of took me and gave me a lot of exposure because it was a Nike team. We traveled all over the country. So that's kind of like the big one. But locally, I mean, it was this team my dad coached that I can't remember the name of. So yeah.
What was your first introduction to high school hoops? Like, were you going to games as a kid?
Yeah.
I think a lot of us grew up in Maine. Like, our first basketball heroes are like the high school kids that came before us, right? So,
oh yeah.
What was it for you?
I mean, I would go to, I went to McAuley games starting in 5th or 6th grade. I mean, Sarah Marshall was, a big hero, and she kind of paved the way, at least kind of watching her from, a younger age, seeing like the steps and that she took to get, to college. I kind of wanted to emulate that. I also went to a lot of like NESCAC games. So I loved going to the Bowdoin games as well. So not just high school, but some D3 basketball as well. But, Sarah, who else? Bracy Barker was one that I remember watching. Heather Ernest was another one. So there were a lot of girls that I looked up to that, saw that it could take them to college. So
a lot of talented girls too. Like you just mentioned a handful, but like back then, like even like now too, we got a lot now, but like I feel like there's always been like just a ton of talented girls, but you just mentioned an incredible group right there. Like just early 2000s was stacked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was. And, I go to McAuley. I mean, we go to Deering games, even like, it would just anything local, go to the gym.
So when did you kind of separate yourself from the pack? You mentioned running with the Crusaders and you guys were going to tournaments. This was in middle school.
That was right before high school. So like right before I went to McAuley, that's kind of when I started. I played for both teams that spring of 8th grade, but yeah. Was
it more so because you were tall or was it because you were good?
I mean, it was both, obviously. No, I think, it was both. Part of it was my height. I was a lot taller than the girls I was playing with, but, I wanted to develop guard skills as well. So I think the whole point was to be well-rounded because, I got to McAuley, we can talk about it, but like I played point guard my freshman year because that was an open spot. So like that helped me kind of in that transition.
Yeah, we hear a lot of times about people getting pigeonholed into positions because of their height and stuff like that. But it sounds like you had coaches growing up that kind of let you develop, right? And just let you try different things and develop your skill set.
Yep, definitely. I had a trainer growing up that, I mean, that was kind of the name of the game. It's develop all skills because you don't want to get stuck in one place.
How about camps? Did you go to summer camps growing up? Because I feel like summer camps had more importance back than they do now. Like everyone's doing the AAU thing now. But it used to be like Switch Camp and Pine Tree Camp and stuff like that. Like what were you into back in middle school?
Yeah. So, I mean, I went to hoop camp.
Oh, yes.
I think I went to that for a couple of years.
Yeah.
Yeah, I went to the USM camp
Yeah.
a lot. Those were the big ones. I mean, I think I went to McAuley camp when I was, before I went to McAuley. I'm trying to think of anything else. Oh, I went to Maine camp. So all the local stuff. And then there were, camps in New England that I could not recall what they were. But I
Yeah.
mean, every weekend or week or so in the summer, I was somewhere.
Any fond memories of hoop camp? I worked hoop camp as a counselor, so like I only got it from the
Okay.
counselor's perspective. I didn't get it as the player's perspective, but
I
it definitely
mean,
had to be a good time for a camper.
it was a lot of fun. I just remember, is there still a dome? Like there was like the outdoor courts and then there
Yeah.
was like, yeah. So I remember that. No, that stuff was a lot of fun. And you're also like kind of roughing it a little bit.
Yeah.
So,
For those that don't know about hoop camp, like you actually sleep in cabins. It's on a lake.
yep.
It's in the woods. Like it's definitely like very unique. It's very Maine. So
Yes,
it's
it
definitely one of
is.
a kind.
Yep.
Coming into high school, how'd you pick McAuley? Because grew up in Yarmouth, but
Yep.
McAuley is not in Yarmouth. So how did that all happen?
It is not. I mean, part of it was knowing the program and seeing the success of the program. I mean, I was at a private school, like I said, NYA, seventh and eighth grade. And really liked it. It was in my town. But it was also a Class D school. And I think we kind of knew that I didn't want to be stuck playing Class D basketball.
Yeah.
And like I said, I had some sort of family tie with, the Cimino side of my family going to Cheverus. But honestly, it was, I also had friends that were a year older than me that all were going to McAuley that I played with. And, it was just kind of the right fit. And I knew playing for McAuley, playing for Liz Rickett, like that's what I needed to do if I wanted to play in college.
Also doesn't hurt that they just won back-to-back state championships right before that, right?
Yes, they did. And, I was very familiar with, the team and everything. So it kind of was a no-brainer. I mean, I thought about going back to Yarmouth High School a little bit, but I think going to McAuley made the most sense.
So even at that age, like you were thinking like long term, like this is if I go here, it can help me get to where I want to go down the road. So like at what point were you thinking like I want to play like college basketball and not just any college basketball, I want to play at the highest level. Like at what age were you thinking that?
Well, I didn't know if I was going to play at the highest level, but I think in seventh and eighth grade, it was kind of not obvious, but like I could do this at the, in college, whether it was D1, D2 or D3, like this is something that could really happen. So yeah, I mean, seventh and eighth grade was kind of when I thought about that.
Back then, were you thinking like, oh man, like it'd be cool to go to like Bowdoin or like it'd be cool to go to Bates, like these local schools, like even like Maine, because Maine was really good at that point too. Like
Yeah.
they were coming off like 5 straight NCAA tournament appearances and stuff like that. So was that in the back of your mind at all?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think I definitely think that was what I was thinking. I never, and this is completely honest, like until after my freshman going in my sophomore year, I didn't expect any like where I ended up was where I was going to be. I wasn't thinking, top D1 colleges. So it's definitely, it wasn't kind of, I'm going to go play for UConn or Tennessee or any of those teams. It was more local stuff, but then you get the exposure and things kind of snowball from there.
I'm going to ask you this question now, so I don't forget it later on. But obviously, you went and played at Stanford, which we'll talk about down the road here. But had you picked a local school, what would you have picked? Not based on competition level, but if you could have went to one of the schools here in Maine, just either based on location or just history, like what would you have picked?
I mean, probably Bowdoin. I mean, I loved going up there. I loved going to their games. They had such great crowds. I mean, they probably, I don't know about lately, but it was so fun to play up there or go up there. That's probably my pick. I mean, yeah, I really liked it whenever
Great program too. Great program.
Fantastic. And yeah, they had, I mean, growing up, like those were the games we'd go to see, awesome teams. So that's probably my pick.
Coming into high school, what were your honest expectations as a freshman? Were you just like, I just want to get playing time? I want to win a state championship. What was your mindset coming in?
Yeah. So I think it was just get any sort of playing time to kind of make a difference. I didn't go in expecting to start, especially, with a lot of the team came back after they won the state championship. So that wasn't, an expectation, but, once the season gets started and you kind of see how you fit within the team, it was really that freshman year, I was much more of a supporting role. I was just more of a facilitator, playing point guard, a position that I was not comfortable with. Looking back, I was so scrawny and skinny. It just didn't really make a lot of sense. But yeah, it was just kind of to be a more supportive role. Mm-hmm.
How were teams matching up with you? Because you were 6'1" as a freshman playing point guard.
Yeah.
So, were teams putting their point guard on you, or were they putting their big on you, or what was that matchup like?
I'm pretty sure it was the point guard was guarding me. At that time, I wasn't probably aware of, find the mismatch and do something about it. But yeah, I'm pretty sure it was just kind of standard matchups. So yeah, but I definitely was, sometimes a head taller than the other person.
Just didn't recognize mismatches at the time.
No,
that's something you developed.
Not at the time.
So you mentioned when you were playing AAU, you were always playing up at a younger age. So when you get to high school, obviously as a freshman, you're playing up in age too. So did you have a moment like that freshman year where you're just like, oh man, I'm not the biggest, fastest, strongest person out anymore? Did you have any of those moments?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like I can remember playing Portland High School or something like that. They had a really great team. And really a lot of, older athletic girls that I played against. And I was like, ooh, this is going to be tough. But yeah, I do think, playing up a year or two in AAU definitely kind of helped with that. But there were definitely times I can't, nothing in particular sticks out, but I'm sure there were times when I was just, not ready.
Did you have anybody who just owned you as a freshman, like someone on an opposing team that you just?
Oh, I'm sure I can't remember, but I'm sure there were a lot of embarrassing moments that year.
Can't remember, or you don't want to admit it?
Can't remember. Also, I remember we went. So one thing that was great about playing at McAuley is we would go during the Christmas break. We'd go usually out of state to a Christmas tournament. We went to San Diego that Christmas, and that was actually the first time I played on the West Coast. And the teams out there were just so much better than us. And I think that trip, it was kind of a wake up call. Okay, I gotta get in the weight room. I gotta, work on my skills. So that really sticks out as kind of a eye-opening experience.
So freshman year, you guys were defending back-to-back state champs and did not go for the three-peat. So do you remember how it ended? I know you said your memory's a little foggy, but how did freshman year end? I believe we lost in the Western Maine championship game, or whatever it's called.
So yeah, it was disappointing, especially, not winning a state championship. Also, we can get this out of the way now. I didn't win a state championship. You just ruined it for the listeners. For those who don't know, you just gave it away. I know I didn't. So it's not funny really, but from the time I was at McAuley and then my sister who I played with, we played together my senior year, her freshman year. And then when she graduated, McAuley did not win the state championship. So it's the Cimino curse, I call it, at McAuley, is those 7 years were no good. But what year did she graduate? She graduated in, 2010. And they won 4 straight after that? Yep. Mm-hmm. That's all right. You get to kind of bridge that gap. So yeah. We did a nice handoff, but yeah. What were your memories from your first tournament run? Because just getting to the tournament, playing in tournament games, that's what it's all about. So what do you remember most about that atmosphere? Yeah, I think, I knew this from watching games, going to the Civic Center and watching, especially the McAuley fans, how crazy they were. But actually, playing in an arena like that, I don't think I'd ever played in a type of environment like that before. but yeah, it was a huge step up from just like a, regular season game. But definitely just like that, the atmosphere is kind of what really sticks out.
How did you come back better sophomore year? Because you mentioned that it was like a
Yeah.
huge learning curve for you. So
Yeah.
I'm curious, like how serious did you attack your off seasons? Like, were you going there with a game plan? Like, I'm going to work on this. I'm going to add this to my game, or I'm going to do this. Like, how serious were your off seasons?
Yeah. So I think one, it was the first full season I played with the Crusaders. So from, the end of my freshman year season, all the way throughout the summer, I was playing with them. Another thing is, sophomore year, I moved to like my more natural position. I think I played the five the rest of my high school career, but I think that was also part of it. But playing for the Crusaders, going to all the Nike tournaments, like playing against that competition, is kind of really what sticks out as what kind of helped me grow. And also, you start to get interested in colleges that starts to boost your confidence. You're adding to lists and, all that stuff. So I think that piece as well, the confidence piece as well kind of increased.
What was it like sophomore year? Whereas freshman year, you guys are being hunted back-to-back state champs coming in sophomore year, like you're trying to get back to it. So
yeah,
how was that feeling different? Like being the hunter versus the hunted, like it's got to be a different feeling.
Yeah, it was different. Also, I really remember that team sticking out as like, that was a lot of fun, that group we had that year. But, I think there was a little less pressure, for sure. And I think that makes it a lot more fun, honestly. But yeah, I just remember that group of girls just being a lot of fun to play with. Definitely that my sophomore year.
If we could, and this is going to be a lot of pressure on you, but if we could, let's give some loves to some of those upperclassmen. Like, who was there before you? Like, who was on some of those teams?
Well, so that year, like Tara Bollier was a senior that year. I loved playing with her. Courtney Powers. I played with Carolyn Freeman, Elise LaFond. Like all those girls were some of the best teammates I've had in my whole basketball career. So that was definitely a lot of fun.
So you guys have a pretty tough schedule. You guys play a lot of the toughest teams in the state during the regular season. What were some of these environments like, and how hostile do these girls' crowds get? I know I've talked to a lot of the guys, and they said that the guys' games, there's some mean things that are said, some pretty hostile student sections. What about for the girls? Like, what do you remember about that time? Some of the opposing gyms, some of the opposing fans. Like, where were the tough places to go into?
So the toughest places to play were probably, Deering was always tough.
Yeah.
A lot of fun, but that was a tough place to play. South Portland was tough to play. Those two stick out in my mind. Cheverus was not necessarily tough because their program had just gotten started, so they were kind of but they had a good crowd and that somewhat rivalry was coming on, but definitely Deering, South Portland, Scarborough, like those environments.
How far outside the city did you guys travel?
We went down. We played Noble. So what's that like? Kennebunk, like all those teams down south.
Yeah.
Down south. Yeah, I think that was probably the farthest we went. Bonnie Eagle, I believe we played, so that was also kind of a trip. But
I've
yeah,
heard definitely a lot about the Bonnie Eagle fans. Like that Bonnie Eagle comes up a lot just as a nasty crowd. That's what I hear a lot. I don't know if that was the case for you guys or not.
No, that doesn't stick out in my mind, but I believe it.
At what point did you become like the target of like opposing crowds? Because obviously you said freshman year you were more of a role player, but obviously you grew into much more than that. So at what point did you start becoming the target of some of these opposing fan bases?
I probably, sophomore year for sure. I remember kind of the first few games of that season really taking off and that kind of really changed kind of the trajectory of the rest of my career. But yeah, I sophomore year for sure is when people, get a little bit hostile.
Anybody cross the line? Were there points you just like, guys, come on, come on?
No, no, not usually. I mean, there are always like high school guys that like to make comments and stuff like that, but that, you kind of let roll off your shoulder. And I never really had like parents say anything, which is good, I guess. So at least that I remember or have not, not forgotten. But yeah, there was nothing that really crossed the line when I was playing, fortunately.
Did you get up more for road games or home games?
Home games for sure. Yeah. I love playing at McAuley, especially when we played, the teams more towards the top of the standings. Like that gym was rocking, and it was so fun, and really like there was really not a lot better than that.
So sophomore year was your ascent, right? I think I took a look, and I think it was all state second team as a sophomore, right?
Something like that. Yeah, that sounds about right.
So what happened in the playoffs? Because it all comes down to what happens in the playoffs.
Yeah, we made the state championship, lost to Coney. Oof. Yep. But I mean, that team was fantastic. That was a good game too, I believe. But yeah, like going up against, Katie Rollins, Cassie Cooper, like those were girls that I, played with, during the AU season. So it was a tough loss, but I think we probably overachieved a bit that year.
Was that one in Bangor, or was that one down in Portland?
I think that was the last game in Bangor. It was not in Bangor. Was it?
Augusta, maybe?
It was in Augusta, I believe, which that's basically a home game.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was just point advantage.
Yeah. So, but it was a good game, but unfortunately we didn't come out the winners.
All right. So going into junior year, you're 0 for 2 in the state championship hunt. And that's like a drought for McAuley. Like that's gotta be like, what is going on here? But the McAuley program was so great for so long. So yeah, if you could, I haven't had a McAuley person on in a while. What was it about the McAuley program? Like what made that program so special? And yeah, like what was it about the program itself that just led to the amount of success that you guys had?
Yeah, well, I think I can't speak for any of the teams really that came after me because, when I got there, Liz Rickett was still the coach, and she's the one that really took the teams from, not being very great to the state championship. And she ran practices and like they were college practices, like looking back, like basketball was taken really seriously. It wasn't just, something people did after school. It was, we took it really, really seriously. I think that's part of it. I also just think when I was there, the girls that I played with had a lot of pride in wanting to, play well for the school. So I think that's a lot of it. But honestly, like the way that we prepared for teams, we were watching tape. I don't know if other high school teams watch tape. I don't know if that's a thing, but so it was really serious. And also like looking back, it, prepared me really great for college. But I think that's probably something that sticks out in my mind.
For kids that were coming in, like freshmen that were coming in, like, was it intimidating for a freshman? Like, was it kind of like, hey, like, this is how we do things around here, and if you don't do it, then you're not going to be here type thing? Like, were you guys rough on the freshmen?
I don't think so. I mean, usually when we had freshmen come in, we had some that would play right away. So there wasn't necessarily any sort of like freshman hazing or things like that. Yeah. I don't think we kind of were overly mean to them. So, I mean, and also when I came in as a freshman, there wasn't any of that. So.
From a leadership standpoint, is that something you have to grow into? Because obviously being the best player, you can kind of just let your game speak for itself and everyone kind of falls in line from there. Or were you more the vocal type, taking people under your wing? Is that something you have to develop, or would that just come naturally? I think it was pretty natural. I'm also not someone that's super vocal really in any part of my life. It's definitely more kind of lead by example type thing. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think, leading by example and, kind of leading by, the way I play is definitely more my speed than the vocal aspect of all that. So junior year, right? This is your third chance to get a state championship.
Oh gosh.
What happened junior year? And there's got to be a year that kind of hurts more than the rest of them. Was it junior year? Like what happened junior year?
Junior year, we lost early in the Western Conference semifinals. So I mean, it's not really upset. I think we lost to Stanford and then they won the state championship. That was probably the toughest loss that I had in high school. Mostly because it felt like an upset.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, we didn't, didn't get too far. Not the usual McAuley standard, I guess.
Who were some of the players like in the state at the time that I wouldn't say you measured up against, but just like were maybe considered rivals or people that were important that you kind of measured yourself against?
Yeah, I think going back a year, like Katie Rollins up in Coney, Cassie up in Coney, Kayla Parker, who played at Stanford. She was a fantastic player when I was playing. I believe she's a year older than me, but I can't be sure. There were some girls, on Deering that always, stuck out that, were good rivals and things like that. But yeah, I think, Emily Rousseau in Biddeford, she was fantastic. We played together for AU. So it was a lot of overlap there, but that's, what kind of sticks out in my mind.
How about like in the city? Like, cause I've talked to a lot of the guys that were coming up in Portland at the time too. And like, being the best in the city was a thing. Like being the best in Portland, like that was important. That was something that mattered to them. So something that mattered to you, like, were you aware of like just your counterparts, like within Portland and like, just being the best down there, because that's typically where the best basketball is played. Like that was something that was in the back of your mind.
Yeah, but I wanted to be the best in the state, so I didn't really think about it that way, and that's completely honest. Like like Deering was a big rival because they were right down the street. Like that made a lot of sense, but there wasn't anyone from like an individual standpoint that kind of stuck out that was like, all right, this is who I'm going to go up against, when I play. So it's definitely less about the Portland area and more kind of the rest of it.
When did that start becoming a thing? Like, when were you like thinking like, I want to be the best in the state? Like that's important to me, because you mentioned you're not really a vocal person. So it might not be something that you said out loud, but obviously you were thinking. It's like, when did that mindset kick in? Because that's not everyone's got that killer instinct. So is that something you just naturally had and you thought from day one, or?
Not necessarily from day one. I think after sophomore year, I kind of realized that I could get there. And then, junior and senior year, I always thought to myself, like, if we were to play one-on-one, could I beat this person?
Yeah.
And yeah, that was kind of my mindset.
So at this point, I'm guessing you're being recruited, right? Heading into senior year. You've been running AAU for Lord knows how many years now. So if we could, let's go back. Like, when did you start getting letters? Like, when was the first time a school reached out to you, and how excited were you? Like, you had to have just been all super excited. I could only imagine.
Yeah, no, freshman year was when you started getting, the recruiting letters. I didn't go on my first unofficial visit until right before, like, the fall of my sophomore year is when I started to kind of go to look at schools. I think my first unofficial visit was at Holy Cross. So I went down there and toured campus and things like that. And then once sophomore year started, it kind of just took off.
So I gotta ask you this, because I'm guessing like your first visit, you're probably like, oh my God, like I want to go here. Like, this is the most amazing thing in the world. Like, did your parents at the ground, you're like, hey, like, let's wait a little bit. Let's not fall in love all at once. Let's see how this thing plays out. Or like, we already thinking in the back of your mind, like, all right, like, this is just the first of possibly many more to come. What was your thought process like after that first visit?
Yeah, I think it was more the latter, where, I knew that the recruiting and process was going to be over a few years. So as great as that visit was, I knew that I was going to visit more schools no matter what. So I did kind of stay grounded in that. But it's exciting when, college coaches are showing interest in you, of course. So it was awesome.
Did Bates and Bowden reach out? Did any of them try early
They
on?
did.
If they should have tried early, they could have probably roped you in early, like 7th grade, 8th grade.
Yep.
So I had Nick Hanna on a while back, and he said that what kind of turned it around for him is he went out to a AAU tournament. It was Peach Jam, and that's kind of like when he started getting like the big time offers. Did you have a tournament or like a specific AAU season in which your name kind of got out there, and that's when the bigger schools started coming?
Yeah, so I think that season between end of my sophomore year to junior year was kind of really where everything took off. The AU season's kind of whirlwind. We'd go to Boo Williams down in Virginia, which was a big tournament. Junior nationals, a Nike tournament in Chicago. So that was kind of our usual circuit. But I also did a lot of camps. So I got invited to like what quote unquote all-American camps that summer, which was just, a bunch of girls from all over going. And that kind of helped get my name out there. I went to a Notre Dame camp, which was a big deal. Yeah. And then we started going to this tournament in Portland, Oregon called End of the Trail. And that's the first time, I was out on the West Coast. So a lot of when we go to these tournaments, that's when I'd also like add some unofficial visits either before or after. So like when I went to Boo Williams in Virginia, I'd visit UVA in Richmond, kind of make it a long weekend, I guess. And when we went out to Portland in Oregon, that was the first time I swung through to visit Stanford and Cal. So kind of did a visit out there. But that tournament, every college coach that you could think of is out there. If you play well, it kind of, everything kind of takes off. So that kind of sticks out in my mind as kind of the moment where I got a lot more recognition, I guess.
So when did you commit? And was it kind of a priority you wanted to commit before senior year just to get it out the way? So it wasn't something to kind of weighing on you the rest of the year?
Yeah, that was definitely the idea. So I committed right before 4th of July, that summer before my senior year. So the thing with Stanford, though, it's a little bit of a different process because, I had to get a certain score on my SATs before they even sent me an application. I had to apply like it was a regular college application. So I'm applying to college at the end of my junior year, asking my teachers for recommendations. And they're like, what is this for? Like, this doesn't make any sense. But I applied and then they invited me out to, camp. So I went to Stanford camp and found out that, they told me, oh, you got in, we're going to offer you a scholarship. And then I went up to Oregon. I was invited to the Nike Skills Academy on the Nike campus. So was there and then committed while I was there. So, and then the rest is kind of history.
Who did it come down to? Like, what were like the final like 3 schools?
Yep. So BC, Villanova, Harvard, Dartmouth, those I like the Ivies a lot. Holy Cross and Maryland was another one. Those were kind of probably the ones in my top rotation.
So a lot of smart schools, a lot of Ivy schools. So were you thinking education or were you thinking more basketball or both?
Yeah, I mean, I think the education piece has always been super important. I also thought that I would really like playing in the Ivy League. So that was part of it. But Stanford, you kind of get the best of both.
Yeah. And at that point, because they won that national championship, in the 90s, but I mean, they've been relevant. Like they've been relevant for 30 plus years now, right? So,
yep.
Okay. So coming into senior year, you get that out the way. So I'm guessing the goals are Miss Basketball and hopefully at least one state championship. But that was the goal heading into senior year.
Yeah. I mean, the Miss Basketball thing, I think it was in the back of my mind, but it wasn't something that I was, thinking about probably till the time came up.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think anyone from McAuley had a lot of luck with that. So I didn't have my hopes up. But yeah, it was definitely, try and win a state championship and, see from an individual perspective, kind of what else I could do.
Did you get a Gatorade Player of the Year as a junior?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You did. So you're one of the rare back-to-back. Like, not too many people get the back-to-back Gatorade Player of the Year awards. That's pretty big right there.
Yeah.
So what happened here? Let's talk about senior year. So last chance at it, and you already kind of teased it earlier. It didn't happen, but where'd you guys bow out in the playoffs?
No, we lost in the state championship again to Coney. This one was in Bangor, I remember, and yeah, it was a tough one. It was not a good way to end kind of my senior year. But I believe also that the Press Herald put a picture of me crying on the front page after that game. So It was a tough few days. It was a tough few days after that.
What can you tell me about playing in the auditorium though? Because that's it's not here no more. Blessed soul, it's gone. It's since departed. But what do you remember most about that environment?
Yeah, I think it's just there's a lot of history there. It's, if I'm remembering correctly, it feels like people are right on top of you.
Yeah.
But I feel like, it was awesome. I mean, I played in a lot of cool places, but the local places are kind of the ones that still stick out in my mind.
So didn't get a state championship. That hurt. But then, a week afterwards, they got the McDonald's All-Star Weekend here in Maine, up here in Bangor. And I happened to be there because my little brother happened to make the McDonald's team that year. So I was at the banquet. So I know how I went. But you were a finalist for Miss Basketball. Yep. You had to feel pretty good about your chances about getting this award. How much time and effort did you put into your potential acceptance speech?
None. I didn't know that I'd have to give a speech. So I knew, but again, and this is super honest, I did not expect to win. And I think, I just wanted to thank, my coaches and my teammates. That's always been kind of who, you want to give thanks to on that. So yeah, I did not plan and in any way for my speech.
I don't remember how it went, to be honest. That was 14 years ago. I think I was there. I don't think I remember sitting there because I wasn't as plugged in then as I am now.
Yeah.
And Ashley Cimino committed to Stanford. And I was like, Stanford? who is this? Like, what have I missed out on this entire year? But what do you remember most about the actual game? Because it's got to be a good time, like where you just, it's the culmination.
I didn't play. So senior year, and we can get into it if we talk about, Stanford, had a lot of back issues that started probably midway through my senior year. And I just kind of bowed out from the game. I mean, I would have liked to play, that it would have been great, but it just made more sense to wait and play in another game coming up soon.
So you are, like I said at the top, the only person who not only played in a Maine McDonald's All-Star Weekend game, you actually played in a McDonald's All-American high school basketball game, and you were also like EA Sports All-American and Parade All-American, all this stuff. First of all, like, when did those things start coming in? How do you find out? Like, it's got to be pretty cool, like, to just be sitting at home, like, oh, yeah, wow, okay.
So with McDonald's, they let you know that you're a finalist. And I remember that happened early senior year. And I was like telling my parents, and they're like, well, yeah, a lot of people are. So that was a little disappointing. But once, I believe someone called me. I remember being at home, and I think there was a lot of disbelief. Even now, I don't really know how it happened, but there was a lot of just like I said, disbelief. Like, I remember the look on my dad's face, him just being shocked. So there's that. The All-American stuff, some of it, like, I think with Parade or USA Today or one of those, like, I just found out when the paper came. So that's like, crazy. Yeah, so you just look in the paper. Other stuff, I either they reached out to me directly or went to my coach. So yeah, it's a mix, but I do remember the call for the McDonald's game, and again, just the complete shock.
Where was that one held?
It was in Louisville. Yeah, so flew down there, and it was a whirlwind of 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, so like you get to hang out for the dunk contest and 3-point shootout the day before. Like who were some of the All-Americans that year?
Yeah, so from the guys' side, I mean, Blake Griffin, James Harden, Derrick Rose, Kevin Love, who else? Eric Gordon. Those are kind of the guys that are still.
Yeah.
It was, and from the girls' side, Maya Moore was my year.
Yeah.
Jasmine Thomas. And then I had 2 teammates that I was going to Stanford with, Jeanette Poland and Kayla Peterson, that made it a lot more comfortable because, we're going to be teammates for the next 4 years.
What do you remember most from that game? Because you played that game, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep. I played that game. I mean, it was, I honestly, the thing I remember most is just the jersey, like how big this jersey was. Like
it was the style of the right? It was like the ones like hung like way off your shoulders. Like I think it was Reebok or
and we had the Reeboks with the pump, and it was a lot. Like I have all that stuff still like in the bag in my mom's house. So
I would hope so. Hold on to that. That's pretty cool.
There's a lot of stuff that she's storing for me. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. I mean, I think I scored. That was like the thing I wanted to do was score. I'm pretty sure I did. But yeah, I mean, Timberland performed at like halftime. That also sticks out in my mind. But honestly, like the whole weekend, like with the banquet and practices and all that stuff, it was crazy.
Do you get like a massive gift certificate from McDonald's, like $1,000 gift certificate or something like that?
No, and if
Just
I did, I
year,
have not received it. So
yeah.
I have not received anything like that.
Do you guys get a free meal?
I believe we had McDonald's. I think we did. Yeah, we also did like a charity thing with Ronald McDonald House. So it was a good weekend, but yeah.
Yeah, it's still crazy. Like there's a bunch for those that didn't know this. You can go on. There's a bunch of pictures from the game and stuff like that. It's just it's really really cool to see. So like I said, I think Maine's only McDonald's All-American ever.
I think for the girls, I think New England's only. But I might.
There we go. New England, it's even better.
I'm not 100% positive on that, but we'll see.
We'll get research on that.
It gets that verified.
we'll get research on that right away after this. So your career didn't end there. You get to go to Stanford, and you mentioned the back problems. So I'm guessing it kind of plagued you throughout your time out there in Palo Alto.
Yeah. So I went out incoming freshmen are, recommended to go to summer school. So like 2 weeks after I graduated from high school, flew out and did summer school out there, took a couple classes, started training and playing pickup, and we played in a pro-am league and all that. So, that was fine. Had a little bit of a back issue towards the end of the summer, but didn't expect it to really linger. And then freshman year, I get back, I come home for about a month, and then I fly back out for, school and the year. But, the back thing kind of persisted, and I was starting to have a lot of weakness in my legs and things like that. And it just didn't feel right. So, got some MRIs and scans and things like that. And also, so the year before at Stanford, Brooke Lopez, who was a year above me, he got surgery for the same issue, a microdiscectomy. And, that was recommended. So they're like, why don't you get the surgery? It's a scope surgery. You'll be out for, 6 weeks or so, but, you should feel a lot better. So I did that in November. So yeah, that's kind of how my career started out there.
And then from there, did it just continue to plague you, or did it never fully heal, or what?
So for the rest of my time at Stanford, I really didn't have any issues. After I had surgery, 4 weeks later, I was back on the court. We were prepping to play Tennessee. and I had to be Candace Parker. So it was a pretty quick turnaround. I mean, today it's a significant hindrance in my life. But back in college, it really didn't continue to bother me. So it was definitely worth it.
So there's a lot of kids who say, man, I want to play Division I basketball. You know, that's my goal. I'm going to do whatever it takes to get there, but they don't realize the work that it takes once you get there. Right. So
yeah.
I've had the privilege of talking to a lot of kids from Maine that have made that jump, and it's been all kinds of different levels, but no one that's kind of, there's only been a handful that have played at a Power 5, nationally ranked, big time powerhouse program like Stanford. So please tell us, what were the commitments like? Like, you probably had zero free time, right? Like, it was just, you're there for school, but you're also there for basketball, right? So what were the rigors like at Stanford?
Yeah. And like you said, there for school first, but, basketball is essentially a full-time job. So on, depending on the time of the year. So preseason versus in-season versus postseason is a little bit different, but, you're dedicating 6 to 8 hours a day on it, with practice and lifts and conditioning and training table and rehab and all of that stuff, film and everything. So it's a significant commitment. I wasn't, it didn't shock me. I think I mentally prepared myself well enough for that. But, and even so for example, in season, practices are 3 hours. We have 3 hours a lot of practice. And, I know with a lot of programs as the season goes on, practice times get shorter and shorter just based off of, health or just like time on the court, things like that. But we always took the full 3 hours. It was pretty serious.
Let me ask you this, study hall, how much actual homework is done in study hall, or is study hall just like a block of time that's just nothing really
when I was there, we didn't have study hall. We were, I guess, they trusted us to do our work on our own. So, other teams definitely had study hall, but we didn't have anything, dedicated for that. Yeah.
So one thing I like to do, I've been able to travel a lot through my job. I go places, and every time I go someplace, I always try to check out the nearest school. Like I love basketball, I love college basketball. So my goal is every time I go to some place, I'm trying to get into the gym and check it out. Yep. And I went to Stanford 5 years ago, and it is a gorgeous campus, right? It is beautiful. Do you get to enjoy being a college student, or with you guys? You guys are probably traveling. Yeah. Did you get to enjoy your time as a college student, or was it pretty much just basketball in school?
Yeah, I think I did enjoy it, but I definitely don't think we got, the full extent of the Stanford experience just based off of hours in the day. Spring we had a little bit more flexibility, so definitely tried to maximize my time on campus. Also, I came home every summer, so I didn't after my first summer school session, I didn't go back during the summer, so missed out on that. But yeah, it's probably didn't get the full experience, but also got to do a lot of other stuff that, not a lot of college kids can do. So can't complain too much.
That's my next question, because, there's a lot of great college programs out there, but not everyone gets the same fan support. There's certain programs that have much better home crowds than others and stuff like that. You guys didn't have that problem at Stanford, right? You guys always had great crowds. Yeah,
we did have really great crowds. Had just a huge support, booster support, fans that would travel to, our away games, which was awesome. It was, and, when we'd play, those top teams, Tennessee came in, or UConn or anything or Cal, it was packed, and it was a lot of fun, and we had a lot of support.
Yeah, that's the thing. So a lot of girls from here that go to D1, they go to, smaller schools, but, not to shit on them or anything like that. It's incredible to get there. So a lot of times they're playing some of the bigger powerhouse teams early in the year, as an easy game. But you were playing powerhouse teams, like must see ESPN. You got to watch these type games. Like, are there any games that kind of stick out in your mind, or like just any super crazy memories? Because you mentioned Tennessee.
I mean, yeah. So Tennessee came in my freshman year, like I had mentioned earlier, right before Christmas. They were number one and we beat them. And that was insanity because I think after that we became the number one team in the country, and it was just kind of a whirlwind.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of other home games. So actually one fun fact of my tenure at Stanford, never lost a home game. So that was a big deal for us. UConn came in my senior year, and we ended their winning streak that I believe it was 73 wins or something like that. So that was, that was a big deal. Yeah. So yeah, those two games stick out in my mind. There are other games that, that I will never forget that, weren't necessarily at home, but yeah, those two stick out for home games.
And I had the great Amy Vachon on last summer. We were talking about her time at Maine and how she's one of maybe the only person who has an NCAA tournament win to her name. But then I was like, wait, Ashley went to Stanford. Like she had to have made some tournament runs. So like, what's the furthest you guys got in the tournament?
The national championship.
Which year was that?
2008 and 2011.
Oh, so two. My God, I should have done more research on the Stanford years. So you got
so I made it to the Final Four all 4 years.
All four. There we go. Is there one that kind of sticks out more than the other? Because I mean, like by the time you get to the Final Four, I mean, you got 30,000 fans in a big ass arena. So.
Yep. So freshman year we went to Tampa, and that was crazy because it had been so long since Stanford had met back to the Final Four.
Yeah.
So that was, and no one knew what to expect for, experiencing the Final Four, all the different events and all the gear we get and things like that. Like that was brand new. And, we beat UConn in the semifinal game, and then, unfortunately lost to Tennessee, but, made it to the national championship. So that one sticks out. But probably my favorite though was junior year when we went to San Antonio. That city is just so fun to be in for a tournament like that. We also, that we made it to the national championship game again. Unfortunately lost to UConn, but yeah, that was a really fun one. And also to get to San Antonio, we in our Elite Eight game, we played Xavier and won on a buzzer beater. And that game is probably my favorite game that I was part of at Stanford. We rewatched the buzzer beater like over and over again and watched like everyone's reaction. So that was a lot of fun. But yeah, that year was a lot of fun.
So you talked about how the Cimino curse at McAuley, you guys kind of bridged the gap between the state championships. So then you get to Stanford, you get to 4 Final Fours with the national championship. But just won defending national champs right now, right? So like how much do you still keep up to date with the program, and like and how locked in are you as an alum?
Yeah, so I mean, I follow along every year. I mean, them winning last year was so exciting for all of us. And I was out in the Bay Area for work January of 2020. So I was able to swing by and go to a game. And that was like so great to see everyone. And it feels like everything's changed, but nothing's changed at the same time. Yeah. So I still keep up with them, and, I think we had a lot of success at Stanford and a lot of winning and all of that. But to me, the thing that I take away from that is my teammates and how they're still some of like my best friends in the world. So that piece of it is the best part.
Let me ask you this. So you mentioned about just like how rigorous it is, like being in that program, and just how it's just from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, you just got stuff to do. Yeah. How much does that set you up for success in life now that you're an adult? Because I guess like it translates, right? Like it has to like play a direct part in being an adult and having a job and being successful, right?
Yeah, I think it's, one, it's the time management skills you learn in college, that translates. And just, having a routine and sticking to it like that, that's also really translated well. I try not to be as like regimented as I was back in college, having a little bit more fun, but yeah, those skills definitely translate.
Let me ask you this. So ton of team success at Stanford, maybe not the amount of the minutes or the stats that maybe you could have gotten had you gone somewhere else. At any point, we're like, man, like had I gone somewhere else, it could have been different, or would you not trade it in at all for your experience at Stanford?
Yeah, I think I actually got this question a lot my senior year, which is weird, but I think early on I kind of knew that I wouldn't get a lot of time, and part of it was okay because I was coming off an injury, so that was part of it. You kind of start behind the eight ball that way, but I think I could have been pissed off about it, or let it drag me down and just like have bad attitude, or just kind of made the best of it.
Yep.
And kind of carve out a role that maybe didn't translate to time on the court, but could help the team in other ways. And I really did that. I mean, my purpose was to prep my teammates to the best that I could. So they knew exactly what was going to happen on the court when they played our opponent. And also I had teammates and coaches that understood that was valuable. And I never felt less of a part of the team because I didn't get that game time. So yeah, I think having that attitude really helped. Also, it helps when you're winning a lot. So I think it might have been a little bit different if, it was more of a losing situation. But when you're winning basically every game, it really, it really helps. But like I said, my goal was to basically know exactly what our opponent was going to do at any time. So I kind of took that and ran.
So what's been going on since then? So graduated from Stanford in 2011. That's been 10 years. 10 years. Yeah. Class reunion should be going on this year, right?
It is. I think it's this weekend. Not going because usually, we try and get a group to go out every few years for alumni weekend, but this year it's not really going to happen. But yeah, 10 years makes me feel old. But yeah, what's been happening? Like I said, I graduated and came back East and just kind of started working. I think I kind of wanted to have what I consider a more normal job and work in the corporate world and kind of see what that was like. So that's really been it. I've like I said, lived in New York for a bit, been living in Boston, and yeah, that's been what it's about.
That Stanford degree has to come in handy when you're applying for work. I'm thinking that looks pretty good. Right?
It does help. Yeah. It's been great. And part, I said this about, the team and how, to me, it was about the people my teammates who became, my friends. And also it was everyone else at Stanford. Like that was the best part, was the people that I met and the experiences that I had that I wouldn't have had probably anywhere else. So I look back on those years really fondly.
How often have you had to just float in there like I played basketball at Stanford? Have you had to do that at all, like for like any interview or just anything at all?
Yeah. Well, so like I mentioned, I've just started a new job, and we had like a offsite retreat, like in-person retreat last week. So I met people in person and it was great. But when people see how tall I am, that's always a question, is if you play basketball or I get volleyball a lot too, which is good. But yeah, sometimes I get embarrassed of it. Just, I don't want to act like I'm gloating about it, but I'll throw it out there every now and then.
Whenever someone asks you, since you're tall, if you play basketball, you ever just feel a bit need to just be like, no? Why? Why do you ask that?
No, yeah. Sometimes, but usually I'm just like, yeah, I played in college. And then if there's more questions, I'll continue the conversation, but usually that's about it.
So before we actually started recording the episode, I asked you, like, you're going to come out of retirement. Like, do you ever get that itch to play anymore? Because you haven't really played since you left Stanford, right? So for the folks that are listening, when can they expect you to see you out there, like an alumni tournament or just anything?
Well, I mean, I feel like, so I probably haven't, touched a basketball and played in about 5 years. I think I'd have to like really like rehab and like train to like really get to like a baseline of where I can start to play. So it's going to take some time and commitment, but yeah, I definitely kind of am getting that itch to start playing again in some capacity, women's league or something like that. But
what about like, because right now, like the flavor of the season is training. Like, you ever thought about like being a trainer or coaching or anything at all?
Yeah, I mean, not really, honestly. I know actually it's funny you say coaching, because I have a few teammates from college that have, really in the past few years gotten into coaching and coaching the college level. Not that I would do that, but it seems like people are kind of getting started in that. But I haven't really thought too much about it. Maybe like if I have kids and they want to play basketball, jumping in and coaching them, but we'll see.
So I'm gonna tell you one thing before we get up out of here. I live here in Bangor, home of the Maine Basketball Hall of Fame. It's in the Cross Insurance Center right here in town. They have a bunch of stuff on display. Make sure your mom doesn't throw any of that stuff out, because like, that would be really cool to see in there. Like the All-American jersey and stuff like that on display. Like, make sure she does not get rid of that.
No, she would never. It's funny you say that though, because I still have all my stuff. I mean, so I went home. It was last summer. We were going through some stuff at her place. She's like, "Can you look through this box and see if we can get rid of any of it?" And so I'm opening it, and it's all like, it's partially a lot of the stuff that I kept from Stanford, and I'm just like pulling stuff out. And she's like, I'm like, "I can't get rid of this. Can't get rid of this. Can't get rid of," like, all that stuff is still with her. So I'll make sure that it's somewhere special.
Do not get rid of any of that stuff. That stuff.
I never would.
You're the only one. Like, you're the only one who's reached those levels. That's huge. And like you made the claim that maybe the only one in New England, which we had to go fact check. But
yeah, check on that.
Like, you know, a lot of that stuff.
For girls, I know for guys, there's been plenty of guys.
Yeah, we've had some guys. But on the girls' side, yeah, you might be. We're gonna have to fact check. Before we get up out of here, is there anything we missed? Anything you want to touch on before we get up out of here? Did I miss anything at all?
No, I mean, I don't think so. We talked about stuff that I haven't thought about, like I said, in 10 to 15 years. So I think
good though. Like, the memory came back. Like, you think you hit on everything. Like, there was nothing that was really like, they just was a complete blank. It was good.
Yeah, good. I'm glad.
Anything you want to say before we get up out of here? I always give my guests a chance to say their final piece before we leave. So is there anything that, anything you want to address? Any things you want to, anyone you want to call out? Anything?
Any grievances?
You want to call out the Portland Press for putting up that picture of you crying on the front page?
No, I won't call them out. It's funny though, because speaking of that picture, I have a friend who was doing some project and was searching for a picture of me online for something, and that picture pops up, and she's like, "What is this?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that's a great memory." No, I think, I nothing but great things to say about, all the support I got when I was playing in high school and even in college. So like I said, thank you everyone for all that support. And yeah, that's about it.
All right. 2 more questions for you before I get up out of here. One, does your mom have that picture in the bag of stuff from that she has in the house? Is that picture in there?
No, I don't think that one made the cut.
And 2, can I use that picture if I can find it for like the cover art for this podcast episode? Can we use that? Maybe like the Jordan crying meme. We can use that.
No, I mean, if you really want to, sure, but there's got to be better pictures out there. So I'll leave it up to you. I'll leave it up to you.
There's better ones out there. I'll use a different one, but I just want to thank Ashley for coming on to Big Time Hoops, the podcast, and sharing her story. Like I said, like, she's reached heights that no one else has reached. It's crazy. It was good to go back and hear all those stories. And just for all you kids out there, you can reach and you can attain those goals. You can be from Maine and hit those heights. And Ashley's a perfect example of that. So thank you for Ashley for coming through on Big Time Hoops, the podcast. It's going to do it for today's episode. Make sure you're checking out all the previous episodes, wherever you get your podcasts. They're all up there. And I'll see you next week with another Big Time episode of Big Time Hoops, the podcast. I'll see you.